I was in the kitchen making a pot of my famous 5-bean chili when my daughter Natalie came home shouting into her phone. At 34 years old, she still lived with me. She claimed it was to take care of me, but I knew it was because she couldn't afford to pay her own bills. "Rich, I swear to God, if you don't send that child support by tomorrow, I'm taking you back to court." Natalie's voice bounced off the kitchen tiles as she slammed her purse onto the counter. Her face was flushed with anger, her knuckles white around her phone. I turned down the heat on the stove and wiped my hands on my favorite blue apron. "Natalie, would you like some lunch? The chili's almost ready." She spun toward me, her eyes narrowing as if I'd just suggested something obscene. "You filthy old woman, can't you see I'm on the phone?" And then something happened that I never thought I would experience in my 67 years on this earth. My daughter, the little girl I had rocked to sleep through fevers and nightmares, the woman I had raised alone and sacrificed everything for, spat directly in my face. The saliva slid down my cheek as she continued to scream. "You're useless. Just in the way. You should have just stayed quiet in your corner." I wiped my face with my apron. I swallowed the humiliation and didn't say a single word. But something inside me shifted in that moment, like a lock turning, opening a door I didn't know existed. My name is Rachel Turner. I am 67 years old, and I have always been a woman of strong character. But somewhere along the way, I had allowed myself to become invisible in my own home. I raised Natalie alone after my husband Daniel left when she was just 6. I worked as a seamstress for 38 years to give my daughter an education and a decent life. I bought this house in our Chicago neighborhood with great sacrifice, always dreaming that one day it would be a home filled with love and respect. But for the last 3 years, ever since Natalie moved back in with me after her divorce, my own house had become a living hell. She treated me like a maid, screamed at me in front of my grandson Jason, and I always kept quiet, thinking of Jason and making excuses for her behavior. "She's stressed about the divorce," I would tell myself. "She's worried about money," I would rationalize, but in that moment, looking at my reflection in the kitchen window, my face still. During the afternoon, while Natalie went out to handle her business, leaving Jason with me, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. My 9-year-old grandson hugged me and whispered, "Grandma, why does Mommy yell at you so much?" Those innocent words struck me like a bolt of lightning. I realized that Jason was growing up thinking it was normal to disrespect the elderly, especially women. That my silence wasn't protecting him, it was teaching him the wrong lessons. "Sometimes adults get frustrated, sweetheart," I said, stroking his dark curls. "But that doesn't make it right." He looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "When I grow up, I'm going to be nice to you, Grandma. I promise." My heart ached at his words. How had things gotten this bad? I thought about the decades I had spent hunched over my sewing machine, working 10-hour days at the alteration shop downtown. My fingers bore the permanent calluses of a woman who had threaded thousands of needles, hemmed hundreds of wedding dresses, taken in countless suits. Every dollar I earned went toward giving Natalie opportunities I never had. Piano lessons I couldn't afford to continue when my mother fell ill. College application fees I paid by taking on extra alterations. A graduation party I saved for over 2 years to throw, wanting to give her that one perfect day. When she was little, Natalie would sit by my sewing table after school, telling me about her day while I pinned hems. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you," she'd say, her little fingers tracing the patterns on the fabric. What had happened to that sweet girl after dinner, when Jason was asleep? I sat in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea and began to see my situation with clarity. Natalie wasn't here to help me. She was using me. The house was in my name. The bills were paid with my pension. And I also took care of Jason while she supposedly looked for work. But she rarely went on interviews, spent most days shopping or with friends, and came home expecting dinner on the table. But what she didn't know was that I had far more control over my life than she imagined. And everything was about to change. The next day dawned gray, as if the sky reflected the weight I carried in my soul. Natalie woke up in a bad mood, as she almost always did lately. and began her routine of complaints while I made breakfast. "This coffee is too strong. Mom, you can't even make a decent cup of coffee anymore," she said without even looking at me, her eyes glued to her phone. Jason came running into the kitchen, his school uniform on crooked, and when I bent down to straighten his shirt, he said quietly, "Grandma, I dreamed we went to live somewhere else where we were happy." His words went straight to my heart. That 9-year-old boy already felt the tension in the house, the heaviness of the atmosphere, the constant disrespect toward his grandmother. While they ate breakfast, I stood by the stove, observing the scene that repeated every morning, Natalie scrolling through her social media, completely ignoring her son, who was trying to tell her about a school assignment. "Mom, the teacher said I have to make a family tree," Jason said enthusiastically. "Later, Jason. Can't you see I'm busy?" Natalie replied without looking up. "But Mommy, I said later." The boy fell silent, his cereal spoon halfway to his mouth, and I felt my heart ache. It was always like this. Natalie had completely lost connection with what was truly important, her own son. After walking Jason to school, I returned home to find a scene that would change everything. Natalie was on the phone in my bedroom, rummaging through my drawers. "Yeah, Sophia, the house is in a great location," she was saying to her sister. "You know how old people are. They always exaggerate their ailments. When she has to go to the nursing home, I can finally fix this place up the way it should be." She noticed I had arrived but wasn't fazed. On the contrary, she continued talking as if I wasn't there. "The neighborhood is gentrifying fast. This house will be worth double in a few years." I stood frozen in the doorway, invisible in my own bedroom, as my daughter planned my future without my input or consent. That afternoon, sitting in my favorite armchair in the living room where I had sewn for so many years to give her everything she needed, I understood that the time had come to stop being the silent victim of my own story. The following weeks were a painful revelation of how my family truly saw me. Natalie had invited her sister Sophia to dinner one Sunday, and I was excited, thinking we would have a quiet family meal. I made a standing rib roast, both of their favorite dish since they were girls. I set the table with my best china and put on my navy blue dress, the one that always looked elegant. But when Sophia arrived, the two of them locked themselves in Natalie's room to talk privately. From the kitchen where I was washing dishes, I could overhear snippets of their conversation that made my blood run cold. "Natalie, I totally get it," Sophia was saying in that condescending tone she had always used. "Look at how I live with George peacefully without having to take care of Mom 24/7. You've done your part. She had her life. Now it's your turn to live yours." I heard them laugh, and then Natalie replied, "Sometimes I feel like I live in a museum. Sophia, I can't move anything, can't change anything, and on top of that, I have to be grateful all the time because it's her house. I feel like a teenager again." "Exactly," Sophia continued. "And besides, how long is this going to last? Old people live into their 90s now. Can you imagine another 20 years of this?" My hands trembled as I dried the same plate over and over. These were my two daughters, the girls I had raised with so much love, talking about me as if I were a burden, an obstacle to their happiness. In that moment, I understood that it wasn't my paranoia. They truly saw me as an inconvenience. When they came out of the room and sat at the table, they acted as if nothing had happened. "Oh, Mom, that roast smells delicious," Natalie said with a fake smile. "Isn't it true that nobody makes a roast like Grandma Rachel?" Sophia added, picking up Jason. But I had already seen them without their masks. I had heard their true feelings. And that night, I lay awake until very late, feeling something inside me break that would never be the same again. In the following days, I noticed things I had previously overlooked or justified with excuses, like when Natalie would have friends over and introduce me by saying, "This is my mom. She lives here with me," as if I were a temporary guest in my own home. Or when Jason wanted me to read him stories and Natalie would interrupt, "Let your grandma rest, Jason. She's too old to be playing with you." And I would wonder, since when did taking care of my grandson become a burden? Since when did my age become a limitation on love? One morning, while hanging laundry in the yard, I overheard Natalie talking to a neighbor about retirement homes. Yes, Mrs. Peterson. That assisted living facility in Northbrook is very nice. My cousin put her mother-in-law there and says they take great care of her. You have to think about these things, right? We can't be selfish with our parents. When I went back into the house, she had already hung up the phone and acted as if nothing had happened. Mom, don't you think you need more exercise? You could go to those senior yoga classes. She told me in a tone that was meant to be caring, but that I now recognized as manipulative. That afternoon, while Natalie went to pick up Jason from school, I decided to go through my important papers. It had been years since I'd looked at them all, always trusting that everything was in order. But when I opened the safe where I kept my documents, I found something that left me speechless. Several papers had been moved, some were photocopied, and there were new documents that I didn't remember signing. Among them was a power of attorney that gave Natalie access to my bank accounts, in case of a medical emergency. I didn't remember signing it, but there was my signature. Looking closer, I realized with horror that it wasn't my signature at all. The R in Rachel wasn't formed the way I always wrote it, with a slight curl at the bottom. This signature was a close imitation, but definitely forged. I sat on the edge of my bed, documents in hand, and understood that my daughter had been preparing to take control of my life without consulting me for some time. That night at dinner, I observed my family with new eyes. Natalie chewed mechanically while scrolling on her phone. Jason tried to tell me about his day at school, and I responded with automatic smiles while my mind processed the new reality. Grandma, are you okay? You look sad, my grandson asked with that sensitivity children have for knowing when something is wrong. I'm fine, my love. Just a little tired, I lied, stroking his dark, shiny hair. Natalie looked up for a second. Mom, if you're feeling sick, you should go to the doctor. At your age, anything could be serious. But in her tone, there was no genuine concern, but rather the expectation that I was in fact sick, as if that would justify the plans she already had in mind. The next day was Saturday, and Natalie announced she would be out all day with friends. Mom, can you watch Jason? You know I need to unwind a bit. As always, it wasn't a question, but a statement. I nodded, as I had for years, but this time there was something different in my silence. While she got ready to go out, singing along to Taylor Swift songs she knew by heart, I watched her every move. She put on makeup with expensive products I didn't know how she could afford on her part-time job. She put on new clothes that seemed to appear in her closet every week. When she left, leaving Jason watching cartoons, I sat down to check the bank accounts online. What I discovered took my breath away. Natalie had had access to my main account for 6 months and had been regularly withdrawing money. Small amounts that I hadn't noticed. $50 here, $80 there. Always with justifications that sounded reasonable when she told me, Mom, I need it for Jason's medicine. The washing machine broke and we need to fix it. The car needs urgent service. But adding up all those emergencies, she was taking almost half of my pension every month. And worst of all, she had found a way to also access the savings account I had opened for Jason's college education. My grandson had an account with $20,000 that I had saved by working extra hours for years. And Natalie had already withdrawn $4,000 without my authorization. I sat there in front of the computer, my stomach churning. It wasn't just the money. It was the betrayal, the disrespect, the way she had been deceiving me while telling me she loved me. Jason came running over. Grandma, can you make me a grilled cheese? His cheerful little voice contrasted with the bitterness I felt at that moment. I picked him up, kissed his forehead, and made him his favorite grilled cheese sandwich with a side of tomato soup. While he ate happily, I made a decision that would change everything. I would no longer be the submissive grandmother who let herself be robbed and humiliated. I was 67 years old, but my mind was clearer than ever, and it was time to show them what it meant to lose someone who truly loved them. In the days that followed, I maintained my normal routine, but inside, everything had changed. Every morning, I woke with a determination I hadn't felt in years. When Natalie yelled at me, I would simply nod and continue with my activities. When she asked for money for her important expenses, I gave her what I had on hand without question. But in the afternoons while she was out and Jason was at school, I began to make very important calls. First, I called my cousin Arthur, who lives in Madison, and explained my situation. He listened attentively and told me something that stuck with me. Rachel, respect isn't begged for, it's earned. And if someone decides not to give it to you, you decide not to give them either. I also contacted Mr. Bennett, the lawyer who had helped me when I bought the house. I explained the situation with the documents I had found, and he confirmed something terrible. The power of attorney Natalie had forged was very broad. It gave her almost total control over my assets if she could prove I was incapacitated. "Mrs. Turner," he told me in a serious voice, "this is more common than you can imagine. Many children manipulate their parents to take their properties, but you are fully within your rights to revoke that power at any time. Your mind is perfectly clear." I left the lawyer's office that afternoon with a folder full of new documents and a plan that would shake the foundations of the life Natalie thought she controlled. On Friday night, Natalie came home with news that chilled my blood. "Mom, I have something important to tell you," she announced as she poured herself a glass of water in the kitchen. "I've been thinking a lot about your well-being, and I think it's time we consider other options for your care." I sat down in a kitchen chair, pretending I didn't know where the conversation was going. "What kind of options, dear?" "Well, specialized places where they can take better care of you. You need to socialize with people your own age, do activities, have medical supervision. You're so lonely here when I'm at work." The irony was cruel. She never worked more than 4 hours a day and spent the rest of her time at shopping malls or with her friends. "Natalie," I said very calmly, "this is my house. I bought it with my work. I maintained it with my effort, and I have been happy here for 20 years. She sighed as if speaking to a stubborn child. "Mom, I understand you're attached, but you can't live alone anymore. What if you fall and no one is around? What if you forget to turn off the gas? I can't be at peace knowing you're at risk." Her words sounded concerned, but I knew my daughter. I knew when she was acting and when she was genuine. "Besides," she continued, "selling the house would give us good money to ensure your care in a really good place. I would manage everything, obviously." That night, after putting Jason to bed, I stayed awake in my room, reviewing every detail of the last few months. I remembered all the times Natalie had casually mentioned stories of elderly people having accidents at home, the times she had commented on how expensive it was to maintain such a large house, how she had started talking about retirement homes as if they were luxury resorts. It had all been a slow, calculated campaign to convince me that I needed specialized care, when the reality was that she needed my money and my house. On Monday, very early, while Natalie was sleeping soundly after coming home drunk the night before, I left the house with my most elegant purse and all my important documents. My first stop was the bank, where I requested to speak with the general manager. I explained the whole situation, showed him the unauthorized withdrawals, and he immediately blocked Natalie's access to all my accounts. "Mrs. Turner," he said respectfully, "you have every right to protect your assets. Your daughter was not authorized to withdraw money from the minor's account." I signed new papers, changed all my passwords, and felt as if I had regained my financial freedom after months of being robbed in my own home. My second stop was with Mr. Bennett. There I signed the revocation of the power of attorney Natalie had made me sign, and we did something even more important, a new will. In the previous one, Natalie inherited everything. In the new one, everything was left in a trust for Jason, which could only be managed by an independent trustee until he turned 25. Natalie would not inherit a single penny from me. "Mr. Bennett, I want to ensure my grandson has a dignified future without depending on a mother who doesn't know how to value or care for what she has." I left that office feeling lighter than I had in years, but my plan was just beginning. That afternoon, while Natalie thought I was taking my usual nap, I contacted a very discreet real estate agency. The appraisal of my house was a surprise even to me. It was worth $400,000, much more than Natalie imagined. The area had indeed appreciated in value, just as she had told her sister. But what she didn't know was that I was perfectly aware of the value of my assets. The agent explained that he had interested buyers, that they could close the sale in less than 3 weeks. "Are you sure, Mrs. Turner? This is a very big decision. he asked with genuine concern. Mr. Reynolds, I replied. I am 67 years old and I know exactly what I'm doing. My daughter wants my house, but she doesn't want me. Well, she's about to learn the difference. During those days, I observed Natalie with completely new eyes. I saw how she spoke with contempt about older women on television. Oh, these dramatic old ladies, always exaggerating everything. I saw how she treated Jason when she was in a bad mood. I already told you no. Jason, not everything revolves around you. I saw how she spent my money on unnecessary things. Expensive clothes, restaurant meals, beauty treatments, while haggling with me over every dollar when I needed to buy my medications. Mom, don't you think $20 for pills is a lot? You should look for cheaper generics, she would say, while carrying bags from Nordstrom worth hundreds of dollars. On Wednesday of that week, Natalie came home with a surprise for me. She had made an appointment with a geriatrician for a general checkup. Mom, at your age, it's important to have complete studies done. This doctor is very good, a specialist in older people. I agreed without question. But when we arrived at the office, I realized it was not a normal medical appointment. Natalie stayed in this consultation room the whole time, answering questions about me, my behavior at home, my frequent forgetfulness, my mood swings. The doctor asked me very strange questions. If I knew what day it was, if I remembered the names of past presidents, if I had trouble managing money. I answered everything perfectly with more clarity than I had had in years, but I noticed how Natalie tried to intervene. Doctor, it's just that at home she sometimes gets confused with dates. Lately, she's been very forgetful with her keys. When we left the office, Natalie was quiet, clearly annoyed that the doctor hadn't found any signs of cognitive decline. In the car, on the way back home, she said something that confirmed all my suspicions. Mom, I think you got nervous with the doctor. You didn't answer as you normally would. It was incredible. She was trying to convince me that I was unwell when I had just proven the opposite. Natalie, I said very calmly, my faculties are perfect. In fact, I've never felt more lucid. She didn't reply, but I saw her grip the steering wheel tighter. That night was the last time I had dinner with my family in my house. Natalie had made sandwiches, something quick, because she had an important date, and Jason was excitedly talking about a science project he was doing at school. Grandma, I'm making a volcano that's going to erupt for real. Will you help me finish it? Of course, my sweetie, I replied, and I saw Natalie roll her eyes. Jason, your grandma is too old to be bending over doing school projects. You'd better ask your Aunt Sophia for help. But I want Grandma to help me, the boy insisted. I already told you no, Natalie yelled, and Jason immediately fell silent, tears welling in his eyes. In that moment, something inside me broke for good. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't rage. It was absolute clarity. Natalie was not only stealing my money and planning to take my house. She was also damaging the relationship between Jason and me. She was turning my grandson into a witness of disrespect toward his grandmother, teaching him that the elderly have no value, that their opinions don't matter, that their feelings can be ignored. That night, after helping Jason with his volcano while Natalie was on her date, I made the most important decision of my life. I stayed up until 3 a.m. writing letters, one for Jason explaining that everything I was about to do was out of love for him, another for Natalie where I explained exactly everything I had discovered and everything that was going to happen, and a third letter to myself, something I had never done before but felt was necessary. In that letter, I wrote down all the reasons I deserved respect, all the times I had shown my love, all the sacrifices I had made, and all the times I had been patient when I should have set boundaries. I wrote until my fingers ached, until I ran out of tears, until I felt I had emptied my chest of all the pain accumulated over the years. At 5 a.m, while it was still dark, I packed a small suitcase with my most important things, the clothes I really loved, the jewelry I had inherited from my mother, the photos of Jason, and a small cross that had been with me my whole life. I left the letters on the kitchen table along with the house keys and a folder with all the sale documents, a sale that would become effective in exactly 15 days. I also left Jason's savings passbook with a note explaining that all that money was for him and that I had protected it from the theft his mother was committing. When I closed the door to my house for the last time, I didn't feel nostalgia. I felt liberation. I had been treated like old furniture in my own home for months, like an obstacle to be endured until they found a way to get rid of me. Natalie wanted me to disappear from her life so she could keep everything I had built. Well, I was going to give her exactly what she asked for, my absence, but without the prize she expected. The taxi taking me to the bus terminal was driving me away, not just from that house, but from years of silent humiliation. When the driver asked if I was okay because he had seen me crying, I smiled and told him, "I'm perfect, young man. For the first time in a long time, I'm perfect." On the bus to Madison, as I watched the landscape pass by the window, I thought about what Natalie would find when she woke up, the letters explaining exactly what she had done wrong, the sale documents showing her she no longer had a home to live in rent-free, Jason's bank statement revealing her thefts, and above all, my total absence. There would be no yelling, no pleading, no televised drama, just the absolute silence of a woman who had finally decided her dignity was worth more than keeping together a family that had already broken from the inside. Natalie had spent years telling me I was a burden, that I was in the way, that I should leave. Well, she had gotten her wish. But she never imagined that when I left, I would take with me everything that truly mattered. I arrived in Madison at 11 in the morning, and my cousin Arthur was waiting for me at the station with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Rachel, you look different," he said as he carried my suitcase. "You look free." He was right. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of walking on eggshells in my own house. His wife, Carol, greeted me with a long, sincere hug. "This house is your house for as long as you need," she said with a warmth I had forgotten existed among family. They gave me the guest room, small but cozy, with a window overlooking a garden full of lilacs. It was the first time in years I would wake up without the sound of screaming or complaints in the background. During my first few days in Madison, my phone rang nonstop. Natalie called every hour, first with a desperate voice, then furious, then pleading. I listened to the voicemails she left, but I didn't answer a single call. "Mom, this is crazy. You can't sell the house without consulting me," she screamed in one message. In another, she changed her tone. "Mommy, forgive me if I said something that upset you, but you can't punish Jason like this. He needs you." And in the most desperate one, "Rachel, this is illegal. I'm going to sue to stop the sale." Each message confirmed that I had made the right decision. There wasn't a single real apology, not a single acknowledgement of all the harm she had done. Just panic at losing what she considered hers. On the third day, I received a call from Mr. Bennett. "Mrs. Turner, your daughter showed up at my office with a lawyer. They're trying to contest the sale, claiming you are not in your right mind." I laughed for the first time in weeks. "Mr. Bennett, I hope you showed them all the medical and psychological documents you asked me to get." "Of course, ma'am. The geriatrician's certificate confirms you are in perfect mental condition. Your daughter has no legal recourse. The sale is proceeding as scheduled." I hung up the phone feeling a satisfaction I had never experienced before. Natalie had completely underestimated her poor old mother. One afternoon, while helping Carol prepare dinner, a call came that broke my heart. It was Jason crying. "Grandma, why did you leave? Mommy says you're mad at me." His trembling little voice made my own hands shake. "My love, I could never be mad at you. I love you more than anything in the world." "Then why don't you come home? I miss you helping me with my homework." Carol noticed I was crying and put a hand on my shoulder. "Jason, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions to protect the people they love. I'm protecting you, even if you don't understand it right now. But when are you coming back?" The question tore me apart. "I don't know, my sweetie, but I want you to know that you will always be the most important thing to me." After hanging up, I locked myself in my room and cried like I hadn't cried in years. It wasn't a cry of sadness, but of rage. Rage because Natalie was using Jason to manipulate me emotionally. Rage because my grandson was suffering the consequences of his mother's selfish decisions. Rage because after everything I had done for her, Natalie didn't understand that I had made this decision precisely to protect Jason from growing up in an environment where elders are not respected. Carol knocked gently on the door. "Rachel, can I come in?" She entered with a cup of chamomile tea and sat beside me on the bed. My sister Hope went through the same thing with her son. "It hurts now. But you did the right thing." That night, lying in my new bed, I started to remember how I had gotten into this situation. I thought of Daniel, my ex-husband, who had left when Natalie was 6 because he wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family. I remembered the nights I sewed until 3 in the morning to pay the rent for our tiny apartment in the city. Natalie was a beautiful child with big eyes and a mischievous smile who always asked when her daddy was coming back. "Soon, my love." I would lie because I didn't have the heart to explain that he had chosen his freedom over us. For years, she was the only good thing in my life. The reason I worked 18 hours a day. The motivation to keep going when everything seemed impossible. I remembered when Natalie turned 16 and I had saved for 2 years to throw her a party that lived up to her dreams. I rented a small hall, bought her a pink dress that made her look like a princess, and hired a band I knew from work. That night, watching her dance with my brother Robert, who had played the role of a father, I felt that all the sacrifices had been worth it. "Mommy, thank you for doing this for me," she had told me that night, hugging me tightly. "You're the best mom in the world." Those words had been like a balm to my tired soul. At what point had that grateful child turned into the woman who spat in my face? The next day, Arthur suggested we go for a walk downtown. It had been years since I had strolled without rushing, without having to run back home to prepare food or wash Natalie's clothes. We walked through the cobblestone streets, saw the old churches, and sat on a bench in the main square, eating ice cream like 2 tourists. "Rachel," Arthur said as we watched the families walk by, "when was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" I thought about it and realized something terrible. I couldn't remember the last time I had done something for myself. Everything in my life had revolved around Natalie's needs, and then Jason's. "You know what?" I told Arthur. "I want to call my old friend Rose. We worked together at the sewing shop 20 years ago. Rose had married a businessman and moved to Austin, but we had kept in sporadic contact. When I called her and told her my situation, her reaction surprised me. "Rachel, it's about time you woke up. I always knew that girl was taking advantage of you. The times I called your house and she answered with a sour face as if I were a nuisance." Rose invited me to visit her in Austin. "Come for a few days, honey. I have a clothing business and you could help me out. It'll do you good to be active and meet new people." That conversation made me reflect on how many opportunities I had turned down over the last few years for the sake of not leaving Natalie alone. How many invitations from friends. How many trips. How many moments of joy I had sacrificed for a daughter who in the end only saw me as her personal servant. I remembered when my friend Teresa had invited me on a Caribbean cruise to celebrate her 60th birthday. "Oh, Teresa, I can't leave Natalie with the boy. She works so hard," I had said, but the reality was that Natalie worked 4 hours a day and spent the rest of her time at the gym or with her friends. I had turned down a dream trip to take care of a grown woman who was perfectly capable of taking care of herself. On Saturday morning, while we were having breakfast on Arthur's patio, an unexpected call came. It was Sophia, Natalie's sister, her voice nervous. "Aunt Rachel, where are you? Natalie is going crazy looking for you." "I'm perfectly fine. Sophia. And tell your sister to stop the drama." "But Aunt Rachel, Jason is so sad. He keeps asking for you." "Sophia," I said in a firm voice. "Jason is sad because his mother is emotionally manipulating him. Instead of explaining the truth, she's using his pain to make me feel guilty." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "Aunt Rachel, the truth is Natalie is really desperate. I don't think she ever imagined you would do this." "Exactly," I replied. "She never thought I was capable of defending myself. That was her mistake." After hanging up, Arthur asked me something that made me reflect deeply. "Rachel, do you think Natalie really didn't know she was hurting you? Or did she just not care?" The question made me uncomfortable because it touched on something I had avoided thinking about. For years, I had convinced myself that Natalie acted this way because she was stressed, because the divorce had affected her, because raising Jason alone was difficult. But sitting there on that quiet morning, I remembered dozens of moments when I had seen in her eyes that she knew exactly what she was doing, like when she would yell at me in front of her friends and then wink at them as if it were a game, or when she would ask for money borrowed, knowing perfectly well she would never pay it back. "Arthur," I said finally, "I think Natalie knew she was hurting me, and I think she liked having that power over me." It was the first time I had admitted it out loud, and saying it freed me from a huge burden. For years, I had made myself believe that I was too sensitive, that I was exaggerating, that I was misinterpreting her actions. But the truth was simpler and more painful. My daughter had enjoyed humiliating me because it made her feel superior, adult, powerful. And you know what's the saddest part, I added? It's that I allowed it because I was afraid of losing her love. But I've realized that that love never really existed. That afternoon, I received a call from Mr. Bennett with news that made my heart sing. "Mrs. Turner, the sale was completed successfully. The money has been deposited into your new account. What do you want me to do with the belongings left in the house?" "Mr. Bennett, everything left there belongs to Natalie and Jason. I took the only things that truly mattered to me. And the furniture. There is furniture that is clearly theirs. Let them have it. Consider it my final parting gift." When I hung up, Arthur saw me smile. "Good news, the best. I officially no longer have a house in Chicago, and I've never felt freer." I arrived in Austin on a Tuesday afternoon, and Rose was waiting for me at the bus station with a smile I hadn't seen in years. "Rachel, you look different. More, how can I put it, more yourself." She was right. During the 5-hour journey from Madison, I had felt every mile take me not just further from Natalie, but from the submissive woman I had become. Rose took me directly to her house in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets that reminded me of the America of my youth, when families knew their neighbors and problems were solved with conversations, not screams. The room Rose had prepared for me was small but cozy, with a window that overlooked a garden full of jacaranda trees. "Rachel, this house is your house for as long as you want, and tomorrow I'll show you the business. You'll see. Working again will do you a world of good." That night, as I unpacked my suitcase for the third time in a month, I realized something important. Each time I moved, I carried fewer material things, but more self-confidence. I no longer needed all those objects that for years I thought defined my identity. My true identity was being reborn from within. Rose's boutique was called Timeless Elegance and specialized in clothing for women over 50. "Rachel, there's a huge market of women who want to dress well but can't find clothes appropriate for their age and body," she explained as she showed me the shop. "Here, we don't sell clothes for young girls or grandma's moo-moos. We sell real elegance." I was thrilled to see the well-cut dresses, the quality blouses, the classy accessories. And what would I do exactly? Attend to clients, help them choose outfits, and above all, use your life experience to advise them. Women our age don't just buy clothes, they buy confidence. But my enthusiasm quickly met reality. On my first day, I struggled with the modern register system. My arthritic fingers fumbled with the touchscreen, causing frustration for waiting customers. One woman sighed loudly when I had to void a transaction and start over. Rose intervened with a kind smile, but I felt humiliated all over again. "I'm so sorry," I whispered to Rose during a quiet moment. "I'm slowing everything down." "Nonsense," she said firmly. "You'll get the hang of it. Everyone struggles their first week. But technology wasn't my only challenge. After decades of taking orders as a seamstress, I found it hard to confidently advise customers. I second-guessed my suggestions, speaking too softly, lacking the assertiveness needed in retail. Maybe this was a mistake, I confessed to Rose after a particularly difficult day. "I'm too old to learn new tricks." "Rachel Turner," Rose said sternly, "I've never heard such nonsense from you, the woman who raised a child alone, who bought a house on a seamstress's salary, who just outsmarted her conniving daughter is not too old for anything." Her words stung, but they also awakened something in me. I spent that night studying the store's catalog, memorizing inventory, practicing with the register app Rose installed on my phone. By the end of my second week, I could process transactions without help, though still slower than Rose. Then came a day that changed everything. A woman of about 60 came in, elegant but with a sad expression. "I'm looking for something for a wedding," she said without much enthusiasm. "Is it a happy occasion?" I asked as I walked her over to the dresses. "It's my eldest son's wedding, but my daughter-in-law didn't want me to come. They invited me in the end, but I feel like I'm crashing." The story hit my heart because I recognized the pain in her eyes. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Sharon." "Sharon, you are not crashing anywhere. You are the mother of the groom. We are going to find you an outfit that makes you feel like the queen you are." We spent an hour choosing the perfect navy blue dress with an elegant cut that enhanced her figure without being over the top. When she tried it on and looked in the mirror, her face changed completely. "Is that really me?" "That's the Sharon who has always been there," I said sincerely. She just needed the right outfit to shine. When she left with her new dress and a radiant smile, Rose told me, "Rachel, you have a gift. You don't just sell clothes, you give back self-esteem." That afternoon, I realized that helping other women feel valuable was helping me heal my own wounds. But despite my small successes at the boutique, I still faced physical challenges that reminded me I wasn't young anymore. The standing all day aggravated my knee arthritis, forcing me to take pain medication. And though Rose never complained, I knew my slower pace affected business. My first paycheck was another reality check. After decades of careful saving, I was now dependent on a modest retail salary and my limited pension. The money from my house sale provided security, but I needed to be careful with expenses, especially medical costs not fully covered by Medicare. Each night, I'd massage my swollen feet and apply heat packs to my back, wondering if I could sustain this new life physically. But I refused to give up. This pain was honest, earned through work I chose, not the soul-crushing ache of being disrespected in my own home. During this time, my phone remained silent. Natalie had stopped calling after the sale was finalized. I told myself this was a relief. But sometimes at night, I'd find myself looking at old photos of Jason, wondering how he was coping. Had the volcano project won his science fair? Was he still having nightmares? Did he think I'd abandoned him? Then one afternoon, while organizing inventory in the stockroom, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, my heart nearly stopped. "Grandma," Jason's small voice came through the speaker. "Is that you?" "Jason, yes, sweetie, it's me." I clutched the phone tighter, pressing it to my ear. "How are you? Where are you calling from?" "From school," he whispered. Mom took my phone away, but Miss Wilson let me use hers. She said I seemed sad. Tears filled my eyes. "Are you sad, sweetheart? I miss you a lot. Mom says you don't want to talk to us anymore." "That's not true, Jason. I think about you every day." "Then why did you leave me?" His voice cracked, and I had to lean against the wall for support. "I didn't leave you, sweetheart. I had to leave a situation that wasn't good for me. But I never, ever stopped loving you. We don't live in our house anymore," he said suddenly. "Mom says it's your fault. Where are you living now?" "In an apartment. It's small. I have to sleep in the living room." I closed my eyes, imagining my grandson without his own bedroom, his toys packed away, his life disrupted. "Jason, I'm so sorry things are difficult right now. Can I come see you?" he asked hopefully. "I'd love that more than anything, but you'd need your mom's permission." "She says you're in a secret place." "I'm not in a secret place. Sweetie, I'm in Austin, Texas, staying with my friend Rose." There was a rustling sound, and Jason's voice became more hurried. "I have to go. Mom's picking me up soon." "Jason, wait. I love you, Grandma. Please don't forget me." The line went dead, and I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, tears streaming down my face. That's how Rose found me minutes later, sobbing in the stockroom. "Rachel, what happened?" "Jason called." I managed between sobs. "He thinks I abandoned him. Natalie's poisoning his mind against me." Rose helped me up and led me to the small office in the back. "Then we need to set the record straight. Let's call your lawyer." But Mr. Bennett had discouraging news. "Mrs. Turner, unless your daughter is endangering Jason and you have no legal standing to force visitation, as a grandparent in Texas, your rights are limited. So I'm just supposed to let her cut me out of his life, let him believe I didn't want him. I understand your frustration, but the courts tend to favor parental authority. Your best bet is to try to maintain communication through letters or emails. Document everything in case the situation changes." I hung up feeling defeated. That night, I wrote a long letter to Jason explaining everything in terms a 9-year-old could understand. I enclosed photos of Rose's house and the boutique, telling him about my new life while assuring him he was still the most important person to me. After addressing the envelope, I hesitated. Would Natalie even give it to him, or would she tear it up in anger? I decided to send it to his school instead, with a note asking his teacher to ensure he received it personally. In the days that followed, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. If I couldn't be with Jason physically, I would build a stable life he could be proud of when we reunited. I started learning the inventory system more diligently, practiced using the computer for online orders, and even suggested we create a section for grandmothers shopping for gifts for grandchildren. "That's brilliant, Rachel," Rose exclaimed. "We could feature items for different age groups, with cards explaining why grandmothers chose them." The Grandma's Picks section became surprisingly popular, giving me a small way to channel my love for Jason into something productive, but the hollow ache in my chest remained. One morning, 6 weeks after I'd left Chicago, Mr. Bennett called with news that made my stomach clench. "Mrs. Turner, I've received a concerning call from Jason's school counselor. Apparently, he's been having emotional difficulties that are affecting his schoolwork. He's withdrawn in class and has had several crying episodes." My heart raced. What else did they say? "The counselor believes Jason is struggling with feelings of abandonment. He's told them he thinks it's his fault you left." I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me. In trying to protect Jason from a toxic environment, had I caused him different harm? What should I do? The school suggested it might be beneficial for Jason to see you. They believe a short visit could help him understand the situation better. After discussing it with Rose, I decided to return to Chicago for a day, just long enough to see Jason and reassure him. Mr. Bennett arranged for me to meet with Jason at his school, where Natalie couldn't interfere. The flight to Chicago was turbulent, mirroring the storm in my heart. What if Jason rejected me? What if seeing me briefly only made things worse? Mr. Bennett met me at the airport, his usually composed face lined with concern. "Mrs. Turner, I should warn you that your daughter has been calling my office repeatedly, demanding to know if I'm in contact with you." "Does she know I'm coming?" "No, but the school principal agreed to facilitate the meeting without informing her beforehand. It's not ideal. But given the circumstances, when we arrived at the school, the principal, Mrs. Gonzalez, greeted us warmly. "Mrs. Turner, thank you for coming. Jason has been asking about you daily. How is he doing, really?" I asked. She hesitated. "He's a resilient boy, but this has been difficult for him. Children often blame themselves when adults leave, no matter what they're told." When they brought Jason to the office, my heart shattered. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and when he saw me, he burst into tears. "Grandma, you're not mad at me anymore." He ran to me, and I hugged him as if years had passed instead of weeks. "My love, I have never been mad at you, nor could I ever be." "But you left without saying goodbye." "Jason, look into your grandma's eyes." I knelt to his level. "Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. I left because I wasn't being treated well at home. But that has nothing to do with you. You are what I love most in the world. So why don't you come back?" The question I feared inevitably arrived. "Jason, have you seen how your mom used to talk to me?" The boy looked down. "Yes. And how did you feel when you saw that bad? I was scared when she yelled at you." "Exactly. I can't live in a place where I'm yelled at and disrespected. Not because I'm proud, but because everyone deserves to be treated with love." "But what does that have to do with me?" "Nothing, my sweetie. You have nothing to do with it. That's why I wrote you that letter explaining that this isn't your fault." "Mommy didn't give me any letter." The comment confirmed that Natalie had intercepted my mail. Just one more manipulation. Jason, I said, taking his little hands in mine. I want you to understand something very important. I didn't abandon you. I'm living in another place. But I will always be your grandma. You can always count on me. But I can't go back to living where I'm treated badly. What if I promise Mommy will change? The innocence of his words broke my heart. My love, adults have to change because they want to, not because others ask them to. And the change has to be real, not just promises. I gave him a long hug and promised we would see each other soon. Can I call you on the phone? Of course. I'll give you my new number. When we left the school, Mr. Bennett suggested we go for lunch before my flight back. How do you feel after seeing Jason? Sad for him, but confirmed in my decision. That child is being used as a pawn in his mother's manipulation game. And if Natalie shows up at the airport, let her show up. I'm not afraid of her anymore. During lunch, my phone rang constantly. Natalie had found out I was in the city and was calling me desperately. I didn't answer any calls, but I did read the text messages she sent me. Mom, I know you're here. The school called me. Please come to the house. We need to talk. You can't leave again without seeing me. Mom, please give your family a chance. Each message confirmed that Natalie still didn't understand that it wasn't about giving chances, but about basic respect. At 3 p.m, Mr. Bennett took me to the airport. As we waited in the boarding lounge, I felt proud of myself. I had come to Chicago for Jason. I had fulfilled my purpose, and I was leaving without having let myself be emotionally manipulated. But Natalie had other plans. When they announced my flight, and I walked toward the gate, I saw her. She was standing by the entrance with Jason by the hand, waiting for me. My grandson ran to me as soon as he saw me. Grandma, don't go again. Natalie approached with tears in her eyes. A perfect performance for the occasion. Mom, please. Jason needs his grandmother. I need my mother. Natalie, I said in a calm but firm voice. I'm not going to make a scene here. This is an airport. There are other people. Then come to the house. Let's talk like a family. Natalie, we have nothing to talk about until you understand what you did wrong. I already said I'm sorry. What more do you want, Dad? I don't want empty apologies. I want you to actually change. And how am I supposed to change if you don't give me a chance? The usual circular logic. Natalie, for 3 years, I gave you chances every single day. Every time you yelled at me and then acted as if nothing had happened. Every time you disrespected me and I kept quiet. Every time you asked for money. Borrowed, knowing you wouldn't pay it back. You used up all your chances. Jason looked at me, not understanding the adult conversation, but clearly distressed by the tension. Look what you're doing to Jason, Natalie said, playing her last card. Look what you've done to him for years, I replied. Look how you've put him in the middle of our problems instead of protecting him. Look how you're using him right now to manipulate me. Natalie was speechless for a moment. Jason pulled on my blouse. Grandma, can I go with you? His innocent question broke my heart, but it also confirmed what I already knew. That child was looking for emotional stability that his mother couldn't give him. My love, I said, kneeling to his level. You have to stay with your mom. It's your place. But I want you to know that whenever you need me, I will be here for you. You promise? I promise. I gave him a tight hug and whispered in his ear, be good. Study hard. And remember that your grandma loves you more than anything in the world. When I stood up, Natalie's face was red with contained rage. This isn't going to end like this, Rachel. You're right, I said with a serene smile. It's not going to end like this. It's going to get worse if you continue to not understand the lesson. I turned and walked through the gate without looking back, my shoulders straight, my head held high. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself over Natalie's manipulation, and it felt both terrible and necessary. During the flight back to Austin, I reflected on what had happened. Seeing Jason had confirmed that my decision was right. That child needed to know that there were adults in his life who respected themselves, who didn't accept mistreatment, who made difficult decisions when necessary. If I went back and became the submissive grandmother I used to be, I would be teaching him that love means enduring humiliation. It was better to teach him by my example that self-love is just as important as love for others. When I arrived at Rose's house that night, she was waiting for me with a hot dinner and a sympathetic smile. "How did it go?" "Difficult, but necessary." I replied, "I saw Jason." I confirmed that it's not his fault. And I confirmed that Natalie still doesn't understand anything. "And how do you feel?" "Free." For the first time in years, I feel completely free. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks, knowing that I had done the right thing for both Jason and myself. But 2 weeks later, my newfound peace was shattered by an unexpected visitor. I was helping a customer choose a scarf when the shop bell rang. Looking up, I was shocked to see Sophia standing at the entrance, looking nervous and out of place. "Rachel," she asked, though she clearly recognized me. "Sophia, what are you doing in Austin?" After introducing her to Rose as my niece. We stepped into the small back office for privacy. "Aunt Rachel, I need to talk to you about Natalie and Jason." My stomach tightened. "Is Jason all right?" "Physically, yes, but things have gotten complicated." She explained that Natalie had lost her job after repeatedly arriving late and arguing with her supervisor. With no income and the money from my house sale tied up in legal disputes, Natalie had tried to claim she deserved a portion. They were 3 months behind on rent for their apartment. "She's about to be evicted, Aunt Rachel, and she's not handling it well. She's drinking more, staying out late, leaving Jason with neighbors." My blood ran cold. "And Jason?" Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "He's not doing well. His grades are slipping. The school called twice last week because he fell asleep in class, and he keeps asking about you." "Natalie won't let me talk to him," I said, feeling the familiar anger rising. "She's turned off his phone, blocked my emails." "I know. That's why I'm here. She doesn't know I came to find you. But someone needs to think about what's best for Jason." I sat back, studying my niece carefully. "Why the change of heart? Sophia, last I heard, you agreed with Natalie that I was a burden who deserved to be put in a home." She had the grace to look ashamed. "I was wrong, Aunt Rachel. I never knew how bad things really were. I believed Natalie's version that you were forgetful, difficult, unreasonable. But after you left and I saw how she treated Jason, I started to understand." "And what did you see?" "The same pattern. When things go wrong, Natalie blames everyone but herself. She yells, she manipulates, she guilt trips, just like she did with you." "What does she say about me to Jason?" Sophia hesitated. "She tells him you abandoned them on a whim, that you became selfish in your old age, that you no longer love your family." A surge of anger made my hands shake. That's a lie I left to protect myself after years of abuse. And I've tried repeatedly to stay in touch with Jason. I know that now. And last week, I went to visit them and found Jason doing his homework alone while Natalie was on the phone fighting with the landlord. The boy asked me if it was true you didn't love him anymore because he was a burden. Tears spilled from my eyes at the thought of my grandson believing such terrible things. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you love him more than anything in the world, but you had to leave because Natalie treated you badly." "And what did he say?" "That he already knew that he always felt bad when he saw how his mom yelled at you, but he didn't know what to do to fix it." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Sophia, why are you telling me all this?" "Because Natalie asked me to come find you and convince you to come back. But after seeing the real situation, I think what you need is to know the whole truth to make your own decision." "And what is the whole truth?" "That Natalie hasn't changed at all. She's still blaming everyone but herself. She's still expecting others to solve her problems. And she's using Jason as emotional blackmail to try to get you to come back." The information confirmed what I already suspected, but hearing it from Sophia gave it an external validation I needed. "What do you think I should do?" I asked quietly. Sophia looked down at her hands. "I don't know, but I think Jason needs you more than ever." After Sophia left, I sat in Rose's garden for hours, watching the sunset and trying to sort through my tumultuous feelings. I was furious at Natalie for her continued manipulation, heartbroken for Jason caught in the middle, and torn about what to do next. "You're thinking of going back to them, aren't you?" Rose asked, bringing me a glass of iced tea. "Not to Natalie," I said firmly. "But Jason, I can't abandon him to that chaos." "Then don't," Rose said simply. "But don't sacrifice yourself either. There has to be another way." As night fell, I came to a decision. I wouldn't return to Chicago or to Natalie's emotional terrorism, but I would find a way to help Jason, one way or another. I would show him that standing up for yourself doesn't mean you stop loving those who need you. I just had to figure out how to do it without letting Natalie destroy everything I'd rebuilt. 1 week after Sophia's visit, my phone rang at an unusual hour. It was nearly midnight in Austin, which meant it was approaching 11 in Chicago. I almost didn't answer, but something told me I should. "Hello." There was a long pause, followed by a voice I barely recognized. "Mom." Natalie's voice was rough, as if she'd been crying. Gone was the imperious tone I'd grown accustomed to, replaced by something that sounded almost broken. "Natalie," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It's late." "I know. I'm sorry." Another long pause. "I need to talk to you." I sat up in bed, turning on my bedside lamp. "I'm listening." "I'm in trouble." Her voice cracked. Serious trouble. For the first time in years, I heard real vulnerability in her voice, not calculated manipulation. "What kind of trouble?" "Financial. They're going to evict us from the apartment. I don't have a job. I don't know what to do with Jason. And why are you calling me?" As I recall, "I'm a filthy old woman who's only in the way." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Natalie spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Mom, I didn't know how to apologize. Natalie, do you really understand what you did to me?" "I think so. I made you feel like a nuisance in your own home. I stole your money. I disrespected you in front of Jason. I treated you as if you were my employee instead of my mother. And why did you do it? Because I felt like a failure. My marriage had ended. I didn't have a stable job. I was living in your house at 34. And instead of trying to get ahead, it was easier to blame you for my problems." It was the first time Natalie took real responsibility for her actions. No excuses, no justifications, no blaming others. "And what do you need from me now?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "Help, not for me, but for Jason. He's not to blame for my mistakes." "What kind of help? I don't know. Maybe he could come live with you while I get my life together." The proposal coming from her surprised me. "You'd be willing to let Jason live with me if that's what's best for him?" "Yes. You were always a better mother than I have been, and you are definitely a better grandmother than I am a mother." That conversation left me in a complex emotional state. On one hand, I felt a strange satisfaction seeing that Natalie finally understood the magnitude of her mistakes. On the other hand, it hurt me deeply to see my daughter in that situation, no matter what she had done to me. And above all, I was both excited and terrified about the possibility of taking care of Jason. "Natalie, if we are going to consider that option, I need you to understand a few things. First, this doesn't mean everything is automatically forgiven. Second, if Jason comes with me, it will be under my rules, not yours. Third, you will need to show real changes, not just promises." "I understand all that, Mom, and I accept the conditions." 2 days later, Mr. Bennett called me with concerns about whether this could be another manipulation. We drafted a custody agreement with specific terms about financial responsibilities, visitation, and decision-making authority. When I sent the agreement to Natalie, she signed it immediately. 2 days later, Natalie and Jason arrived in Austin by bus. When I saw my grandson get off the bus, my heart filled with joy. He had grown in those months, but above all, he looked exhausted and wary. Natalie, on the other hand, looked haggard, thinner, with deep, dark circles that spoke of sleepless nights. When we hugged, it was different. There was none of the previous tension, no acting, no coldness. Rose welcomed us into her home with incredible warmth. She had prepared the guest room for Natalie and had converted her small sewing room into a space for Jason, complete with a desk for schoolwork. During dinner, I observed the dynamic between mother and son. Natalie was more attentive to Jason, more present, more affectionate than I had seen her in years. "Grandma," Jason said during dinner, "is it true I might come live with you? Would you like that, my love?" "Yes, but what about my mom? I don't want to leave her all alone." "Jason," Natalie told him in a soft voice, "Mommy is going to be fine. I need to fix some things in my life. And in the meantime, you'll be better off with your grandma." "Do you promise you'll fix everything?" "I promise. But this time, it's going to be a real promise. Not like the other times." That night, after putting Jason to bed, Natalie and I had the most honest conversation of our lives. "Mom, I want you to know that I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. Natalie, forgiveness is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. I know. And I also know that I have to prove with actions that I've really changed. What are your plans?" "First, get a stable job. I already have some interviews scheduled in Chicago. Second, seek psychological help to understand why I became such a bitter person. Third, pay all my debts, including the money I stole from you. And after that, if you let me, I would like to earn the right to be part of this family again. Not like before, when I only took and never gave, but as a daughter who respects and values her mother." That conversation touched me deeply because I saw in Natalie the girl I had raised with so much love. But I also kept my defenses up because I had learned that pretty words don't guarantee consistent actions. On the last day of her visit, Natalie made a decision that surprised me. "Mom, I've been thinking and I believe Jason should stay with you. Are you sure?" "Completely this week. I've seen him happier than he has been in months. Here he has stability, tranquility, unconditional love. I'm just learning to be a responsible mother. He can't wait for me to finish learning." That afternoon, we started the legal proceedings for Jason to stay with me. Natalie signed all the necessary documents without hesitation, without setting conditions. "Mom," she told me as she signed the papers, "thank you for saving my son from my mistakes. Natalie, I'm not saving Jason from you. I'm giving him the opportunity to grow up in a stable environment while you sort yourself out. That's a very important difference." When she got on the bus back to Chicago, we both cried, but they were different tears. Mine of hope, hers of determination. The first few months with Jason in Austin were a wonderful but challenging period of adjustment. At 67, I found myself exhausted by dinner time most days. I enrolled my grandson in an excellent school near the boutique where I could pick him up after work. But Jason struggled at first, missing his friends in Chicago and feeling out of place in the Texas classroom. Rose was an incredible support, often stepping in when my energy flagged. She taught Jason how to tend the garden, showing him how to identify different plants and insects. "My mom never had time to do stuff like this with me," Jason said one afternoon, his hands covered in soil. "Well, now you have all the time in the world," Rose replied, giving me a meaningful look over Jason's head. Financially, caring for a growing boy proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. School supplies, new clothes as he outgrew the old ones, doctor visits, it all added up quickly. But the biggest challenge was helping Jason process his complicated feelings about his mother. Some nights, he'd cry himself to sleep, missing Natalie despite the chaos of their life together. "Why did she have to be so mean to you?" he asked one evening as we looked through old photo albums. "People are complicated. Jason, your mom has good qualities too, and she's trying to be better." Meanwhile, Natalie kept her word in ways that surprised me. Each week she called me to tell me about her progress. She got a job as a receptionist at a medical clinic. She started psychological therapy. She moved into a small but decent studio apartment, living modestly but responsibly. Most importantly, her conversations with me began to change. She no longer called to ask for favors or to complain about her problems. She called to ask me how I was, how Jason was, to tell me good things about her day. "Mom," she said in one of those calls, My therapist is helping me understand that for years I held resentment against you without reason. I blamed you for my failed marriage, for my financial problems, for everything that went wrong in my life. And what do you think now? That you were the only person who was always there for me, that you gave me everything you could, and that I confused your unconditional love with an obligation to endure my mistreatment. Those words healed wounds I had been carrying for years. They didn't erase the pain of everything that had happened, but they did give me hope. 6 months after Jason moved in with me, Natalie came to visit for his birthday. The woman who got off the bus was unrecognizable. She had gained a healthy amount of weight, had better color in her face, but above all, she had a tranquility in her eyes that I hadn't seen in years. During that visit, Natalie behaved like the daughter I had always hoped to have. She helped around the house without being asked. She played with Jason without being glued to her phone. She talked with me about real topics without manipulations or complaints. One afternoon, she accompanied me to the boutique and watched me work with customers. "You're really good at this, Mom," she said, genuinely impressed. "These women trust you." "I understand them," I replied simply. "Many of them are invisible in their own homes, just like I was." Natalie flinched but didn't get defensive. "I see that now. I made you invisible because it was easier than seeing myself clearly." That night after putting Jason to bed, we had a conversation that marked a before and after in our relationship. "Mom, I want to formally apologize for everything I did to you." "No, let me finish. For years, I disrespected you. I stole money from you. I humiliated you. I treated you as if you were my employee. I planned to take your house and put you in a nursing home against your will. I spat in your face and said unforgivable things. There is no justification for any of that. And why are you apologizing now? Because I finally understand the harm I did to you. Because therapy helped me see that my behavior was abusive, not just rude or disrespectful. Because I want you to know that I fully recognize my responsibility in everything that happened. And what do you expect to happen now? Nothing. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect things to go back to the way they were. I don't expect you to forget everything that happened. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, that I deeply regret it, and that I'm going to live the rest of my life trying to be a better person." For the first time in years, I hugged my daughter without reservations, without fears, without defenses. It was the hug of a mother who sees her daughter finally become the woman she always knew she could be. But my journey toward truly trusting Natalie again was far from complete. The next morning, I received a call from Mr. Bennett with concerning news that Natalie had been asking questions about my house. When confronted, Natalie explained she was trying to find out if Mrs. Peterson's granddaughter still did house cleaning, wanting to offer to pay for someone to clean my house when I eventually moved back. "I know you don't believe me," she continued, "and that's fair. I've lied to you before. But I'm trying. Mom, I really am. Natalie, the trust we had is like a beautiful vase that got shattered. We can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always show." As the months passed, Natalie continued her steady progress. She was promoted at her job, maintained her therapy, visited regularly without drama, and most importantly, consistently demonstrated respect for my boundaries. Rose observed this evolution with approval. "She's doing the work, Rachel. Real change is hard, but she seems committed." "I want to believe that," I admitted. "But I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Maybe this time. There is no other shoe," Rose suggested. 2 years later, my life in Austin had become everything I had ever dreamed of. After 6 months of working at Timeless Elegance, Rose had made an unexpected proposal. "Rachel, I've been thinking. Would you like to be my partner in the business?" The proposal thrilled me deeply. It was not only a financial opportunity, but also a recognition that I had value, talent, abilities that others appreciated. I accepted being her partner, and we signed the papers before a notary. For the first time in my life, my name was on business documents as entrepreneur, not as a beneficiary or dependent. Timeless Elegance now had 3 branches in the city, and our consulting program for older women had become so popular that we had a 2-month waiting list. Every morning I woke up with the excitement of someone with a purpose. Jason, who was now 11, was a completely different child from the one who had arrived with me 2 years ago. Confident, cheerful, respectful, with excellent grades and many friends. One April morning, a letter arrived that filled me with pride. It was from the Austin Chamber of Commerce informing me that Timeless Elegance had been selected as Business of the Year for Senior Inclusion. The recognition was not only for sales, but for our program of free workshops where we helped older women rebuild their self-esteem after difficult divorces, widowhood, or family conflicts. Jason came running from school with a smile that lit up the whole house. "Grandma, my project on American women entrepreneurs won first place." His project had been about me, about how a 67-year-old woman had started a successful business after a devastating family crisis. "My love, I'm so proud of you," I told him as I hugged him. "But more importantly, are you proud of your grandma?" "Super proud," I told all my friends, "that my grandma is a famous businesswoman." Meanwhile, Natalie had surprisingly kept her word. For these 2 years, she had visited Jason every 3 months, always respectful, always grateful, always aware that she was in my house under my rules. She had been promoted at her job, had paid all her debts, had maintained her psychological therapy, and had developed a healthy social life. "Mom," she had said on her last visit, "thank you for teaching me that loving someone sometimes means letting them go." One June afternoon, while leading one of our workshops, a young woman came in who caught my attention. She was about 35, well-dressed, but with an expression of anguish. At the end of the workshop, she approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Turner, can I speak with you in private?" Her name was Anna, and her story broke my heart because I saw in her the Natalie of 3 years ago. "My mom has been living with me since my dad died 2 years ago. At first, it was temporary, but then she stayed and I treat her very badly. I yell at her. I ignore her. I make her feel like a nuisance." We talked for an hour. I told her my story without judging her, trying to help her understand the damage she was causing before it was too late. "Anna, your mother won't be there forever. And when she's gone, you're going to have to live with the remorse of how you treated her." A month later, Anna returned accompanied by a woman of about 70, elegant and smiling. "Mrs. Turner, this is my mother, Hope. She wanted to meet you and thank you personally." Hope hugged me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Turner, you don't know how much my daughter has changed since she spoke with you. She doesn't yell at me anymore. She asks for my opinion on things. She treats me with affection." "Mrs. Turner," Anna told me, "you saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be." These encounters had become the most rewarding part of my new life. Every woman I helped regain her self-esteem confirmed to me that my pain had had a greater purpose. In October, an invitation arrived that thrilled me deeply. The University of Texas had invited me to give a lecture on entrepreneurship in the third age to business administration students. On the day of the lecture, the auditorium was filled with 20-year-olds who listened to me with attention and respect as I told them how I had started a successful business at 67 after a devastating personal crisis. "Mrs. Turner," a student asked at the end, "what would you say to an older woman who is in a situation of family mistreatment but is afraid to defend herself?" I would tell her that fear is normal, but that living with fear is worse than facing uncertainty. I would tell her that she deserves respect, that she has options, and that it is never too late to start over. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Natalie. "Mom, I saw a clip of your lecture online. You were amazing." "Thank you, Natalie. I want you to know that I'm going to tell Jason about everything I did to you when he's old enough to understand. I don't want him to learn a sanitized version. I want him to know the truth, so he can learn from my mistakes." Her words touched me deeply. This was true accountability, not hiding from the past, but using it as a lesson for the future. One September afternoon, while Jason was doing his homework at the kitchen table, he asked me something that made me reflect deeply. "Grandma, did you forgive my mom?" I sat beside him, thinking carefully about my answer. "Jason, Forgiveness is a very complicated thing. It's not like in the movies where someone says they're sorry and everything is fixed immediately. So you haven't forgiven her. Forgiveness is a process. My love, your mom did things that hurt me very much, but she has also made a real effort to change. So I am in the process of forgiving. And what does that mean? It means that I no longer feel anger toward her, that I can be with her without feeling pain, that I recognize her effort to be a better person, but it also means that I don't forget what happened and that I maintain my boundaries to protect myself. I'm proud of you, Grandma. Why, my sweetie? Because you were brave, because you didn't let yourself be mistreated, because you taught me that I have to respect myself. His words confirmed that the most important lesson I had given Jason was not about forgiving, but about valuing oneself. 3 years had passed since that terrible day when Natalie had spat in my face. 3 years since I had made the most difficult and liberating decision of my life. In that time, I had completely rebuilt my existence. I had found my value as a person. I had raised a grandson in a healthy environment, and I had helped dozens of women discover their own strength. But above all, I had learned that self-love is not selfishness, but the foundation of all healthy relationships. From being invisible in my own home, I had become visible to hundreds of women who saw in me an example of dignity and courage. That night, as I sat in my favorite garden chair with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the stars, I felt a deep sense of peace. My journey had been painful, but necessary, and the woman I had become, independent, respected, fulfilled, was someone I was proud to be. I wasn't a footnote in someone else's story anymore. I was the author of my own.